Hi, today I'm going to be talking to Alex Turner from thebusinessdesk.com, and in this interview we're going to be discussing how he's used email to drive revenue and readership within the business desk. So if I can start by asking us, tell us a little about yourself and how you got into email marketing.
Okay, well, my first job was actually as a marketer for a sports club 15 years ago, so I can remember sending out emails, having typed them out in Notepad and done it the very old-fashioned way before a lot of the tools were available on the market, and just really appreciating the importance of that direct communication to our fan base, for all sorts of reasons, whether it's to drive sales through the online shop or for tickets or just to keep them engaged. And so when I moved into journalism, a lot of the marketing techniques aren't really used particularly well. And then when I joined thebusinessdesk.com, which was designed and set up purely as an online platform 10 years ago, email is at the very heart of what we do. It was the tool on which the business was founded. The sending of the daily news email every morning was and is the equivalent of the newspaper dropping through the letterbox. And so it's critical to how the business operates.
Brilliant. And tell us then, so you're sending these emails on this daily basis, who are you sending to them, what's your typical target audience?
Our core audience is the very senior business people within our region. So we operate in 4 regions, the North West Yorkshire, West Midlands and East Midlands. But as our audience has grown, it encompasses a really wide range of the business community. So, for example, in the Northwestern Yorkshire, we send out the daily morning email to about 30,000 people in each region, and the West Midlands is about 20,000 at the moment, and growing.
Okay. And do you know what sort of stats you've got for that, what your open, your click rates are?
Yeah, our open rate hovers around 30 to 35%, depending on the region, and the click-through rates are about the same, sort of 28 to 30% typically.
Very good. And what's your objective of the email campaigns?
Okay, so our emails have 2 purposes. So there's our daily news emails, as well as a couple of weekly news email products that are sector themed, and that's the delivery of our product. The main aim of that is to drive traffic to the website, but it does have the secondary aim of people, just by reading the email and the headlines and the subheads, get a quick flavour of what's gone on. So at one level, the aim of the daily news email is to get them to open the following day's email by thinking, yes, that was worthwhile, I got something from that. The second aim of our emails is a marketing tool. So we run events, we have commercial partnerships, and so we look to use our audience and get them to attend events, as well as supporting some of our other initiatives. So, for example, we sometimes run surveys with professional services firms on a particular sector or on a particular issue, and they want to get a flavour of what the business community thinks about it, particularly regionally. And so emails are a key part of how we generate responses to those.
Brilliant. And I know that you send out, for the first objective, the communication side of it, you send out a business and a property. There's obviously a difference in what they do, but what is the difference between the two? What do you hope to achieve from them?
I think by segmenting the lists, the property themed email is used to establish our turf, really, to say we give this dedicated space. We're able to go into more detail about some of the issues in the sector. So our daily morning email covers anything and everything that's under the business umbrella, but by having a weekly email that just goes to an audience that's interested in property, we are able to get more technical in the detail and a bit more specialist in the topics that we cover that aren't necessarily of broad interest but are of particular interest to that audience. And that helps us establish our space at the top of the news hierarchy, say, well, this is where you go for the quality news for depth.
And can you tell us a bit about the way you structure these emails? So what they look like?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different formats, but the daily email just has a small picture to the left, and then a headline and a subhead, and then we typically have 11 to 14 stories on the email, and it has a bigger header image so that the main story has more of an impact, as you'd expect from kind of the top story of the day. We also send out a breaking news email as appropriate, so and that's a very clean email. It just has a big picture, headline and a subhead. So typically there are 20 words on there and a picture. That's entirely designed to drive people through to the website, to say this is something that you need to stop what you're doing and spend the next 90 seconds reading this.
Yeah. And are there any rules around what type of articles you like to go into there? What makes you decide them as a feature article?
Yeah, I mean, typically most of our content is how we describe it as hard news. So it's stuff that's actually happened. It's deals that have been done. It's big moves in a share price. It's property deals. It's people moves. It's all the very tangible stuff. And actually, we veer away from what I always like to describe as the he said, she said type of news reporting, because what people are looking for from us is to find out what has happened or what's about to happen, and a little bit less on what's everyone's opinion on a subject.
So avoiding kind of the tabloid journalism, I suppose.
Yes, and our brand is very straight, and I stay clear of the word neutral. So independent, but we want to be at the sort of sensible end of the spectrum. And in terms of the news mix, I mean, when I came on board as editor 3 years ago, I spent a lot of time looking at Google Analytics to see what does work and what doesn't work. And obviously a key focus of that was which are the articles that get read. And it had been less of a focus in the business previously, and that really helped improve our open rates, our click-through rates, and time spent on page as well, because we were giving people the news that they wanted, and therefore our longer articles were on those subjects that we knew people wanted to read more about. So we got a much better understanding of which stories should only be briefs and which stories should be at the top of the list, and that made a real difference for 18 months in driving our audience engagement figures upwards.
Okay, brilliant. And what about when you're presenting this information or these articles into your newsletters, have you had any discoveries around the way the information is laid out in there?
Yeah, we've mixed it up a little bit, and we've tried lots of different things. So we've tried different numbers of stories. If you have fewer stories in there, do you get better engagement on each one? For example, we've experimented with picture size and font size. Particularly at the start of the year, we relaunched our website, so that was a real period of experimentation for us before we settled on something that we were happy with and that we've stuck with so far.
Okay, so I suppose the key thing is to sign up and see how you lay it out.
Yes, and hopefully, and the feedback that we have is that it's clean, it's clear, and so people can get to the information that they want quickly.
Brilliant. And I suppose now, can you tell us a bit about one of the email projects you've undertaken and why you classed it as a win?
Yes. I suppose the thing that comes to mind is we have our annual Business Masters Awards, and as with any awards, the key challenge is to get entries in, because you want both the volume of entries and also the quality. So, in last year's awards, we spent much more time planning a structured email campaign. So, in previous years, we'd relied heavily on news stories to promote it, and also PR companies to enter their clients. But we were keen to get a broader range of entries and a lot more entries from people that we didn't know that these weren't companies we were necessarily engaging with, regularly, but who were part of our audience. So by having a more structured approach and also by being able to demonstrate and convey the urgency as the deadline approached, we got much higher entry level than previously, and we got the results we were looking for. We got lots of entries from companies that we weren't familiar with, some of whom ended up winning.
Brilliant. And what did that sort of structured email campaign look like for you guys?
I mean, at one level it was nothing very sophisticated, but it was all about the planning for us. It was about starting early enough in the cycle. It was about increasing the frequency as we got close to the deadline. It was about variety in subject lines and layout. I think previously we'd design a template and stick with it, and people just get blind to it once they've seen it once or twice. So it was about using different messages so that it would appeal to different people, and we also use some targeting in terms of isolating emails to marketing managers, for example, who are most likely to enter, and also to the senior managers. So award entries really come from three places: the PR companies, the marketing managers, and the head of the company. And so by hitting those three groups in different ways and at different times, it ensured we got the results we needed.
Yeah, I suppose it's about giving them the specific messages they needed to engage, isn't it? And as you said, it was really interesting. The fact you pointed out about a variety of types of email, stopping people becoming blind to it, because I think that's one of the traps that people often fall into. So yeah, it sounds really good. And I suppose on the reverse question to all of that is, can you tell us about a project that you've done that hasn't gone so well and I suppose what you learned from it?
I suppose rather than a particular project, when I first joined the business, we were very haphazard on sending times for our news email. So we had sort of a notional target time of 8:15, but because of the system we had in place at the time, we couldn't actually schedule an email. So when you pressed the button, it sent. That meant that the regions tended to send the email when they thought it was finished and ready. So sometimes that would be 7:58, and other times it would be 8:34. And actually, by spending time analysing the engagement based on time of dispatch, we were really able to narrow it down to where our sweet spot is. And so now, almost all of our emails go between 8:15 and 8:20, ideally 8:15 on the dot. And so if you see our email land at 8:23, you'll know I'm not happy. And if it's after 8:25, then there's usually been either a technical glitch or a late piece of news that we thought this must be included. So, as to use the old phrase, let's hold the front page.
Brilliant. And do you notice much of a difference between when you send it out at 8:15 and if you send it out at 8:35? Is there a difference in your open click-through rates?
Yeah, there's a difference, particularly on the click-through. So the open rate dips a little bit, but not significantly. But it's the click-through rate that we fall down on. And I think that's because of where it fits into people's routine in the working day. They give themselves a bit more time earlier in the morning, but the closer you get to 9 o'clock, the more they think they have their own work to be getting on with. So whereas they might have spent 10 minutes going through their news feeds, they now spend 5. And so it's a case sometimes I think that we risk missing the boat. So if our email isn't there, they read another news source instead.
Brilliant. And if you could give one piece of advice to an email marketer, what would that be?
Interrogate the analytics. Once you've sent quite a few emails out, you will have an awful lot of detail. Now, a lot of that is just going to be noise, and you're not always going to know where to look. Was it the headline that worked? Was it the time you sent it? Was it the day you sent it? But if you really look into the detail, you will be able to work out what it is that makes the difference, through experimentation, but also sometimes through being consistent. So sometimes you have to hold your nerve and repeat the same thing several times and say, so you can be sure that approach either hasn't worked or actually it was another factor. But I'd also say, don't be afraid of breaking the rules. Somebody at PR school has said that the best time to send a press release is 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, which just means that I get swamped around 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. Whereas actually very few people, unless the news agenda drives it, sends me a press release at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We get some, but nothing compared to the volume that you get at 10 o'clock in the morning. So sometimes go with the conventional wisdom, but don't be afraid to break it either.
I guess it's about understanding your audience as well, isn't it?
Yes, and think, based on the message that you're trying to give to them, what's most appropriate. So for us, when we started 10 years ago, our tagline was "Tomorrow's news today," and the reason our email goes at 8:15 is because it's to get people the news they need before they start the day. So but the tagline came from, the stock market opens at 7 o'clock in the morning, so you get a good batch of live news, but the newspapers have already been printed, so you will only read that in a newspaper in 24 hours time. So that's why it was important to us to go first thing in the morning, because actually some of the email news providers used to send at 10 o'clock in the morning. They used to have a very relaxed start to the morning. They thought that was a good time, but as the years have gone by, everyone's kind of screwed it down and clustered around the same sort of time. But that's not to say that when we send emails outside of that window, particularly the breaking news, they have real impact because they're standalone and they aren't surrounded by as much noise.
That's brilliant. I think for me, the key thing you just said there, and the way to apply this to every other business, is when we all see these industry stats coming out the optimum time to open, the optimum day, the thing to be, I suppose, aware when we're seeing that is that everybody else is seeing it, and everybody's going to start sending exactly that same time. So as you sort of say, it's about breaking rules, understanding your customers, and testing and measuring.
Yes.
Brilliant. And almost the final one now. What's next for you guys around email? How are you going to move forwards?
So we're conscious of the challenge that email presents, the sort of doom mongering that says that in 10 years or 5 years people won't really use email, or that the young people, the people younger than millennials, don't really use email. And so in the back of our mind we're conscious of how that might play out in the long term for our business. Email, even now with the growth of social, drives about 2/3 of our traffic. But I think for us, where we're at the moment, it's still about how we grow that list both in an organic way and in a sensible way. So it's not just about getting lots of names and lots of sign-ups. It's about making sure that the people who should be receiving our news are signing up. And usually that comes about as they get promoted through their company and they reach a level where they need to know what's going on outside their office and understand the news and those economic trends that are happening in the wider community. But in terms of how we move that forward and how we use email, I think 2018 is going to be about being a bit smarter, particularly with our own marketing, and being a bit more sophisticated in our approach to that. And I think a lot of that is going to come down to work on segmentation and on just polishing our database so that we can be a bit more targeted than we might have been over the last couple of years.
Brilliant. Alex, thank you very much for your time today, and wish you success. What I'd say is, please, for our listeners, please all sign up to it. It's a brilliant newsletter. We get it every day, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.